Enceladus Radio.
Can you dig it?
Enceladus Radio.
Can you dig it?
Enceladus Radio.
Can you dig it?
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Enceladus Radio. Welcome to All the Grid. I'm your host, Chris Johnson. So many topics, so many issues, so many things going on right now. Where do we begin? Well, one of the stories I want to get into today, mixed messages. Navy welcomes Chinese in Mayport. Here's an article I want to read just briefly, and we'll get into it. Are we giving Beijing mixed messages? On the other hand, the United States Navy is getting ready, maybe, to challenge Chinese claims around the artificial inlets in the South China Sea. On the other hand, the Navy is also preparing to welcome 3 Chinese warships at Naval Station Mayport in Jacksonville, Florida, reportedly the first such port visit on the East Coast. The Navy considers all this normal activity part of a complex balancing act of being a global superpower. Just this week, dozens of our officials visit the Chinese carrier Liang as part of the week-long trip that itself was in reciprocity for an earlier Chinese delegation tour of the United States. Whether disagreements may be, it's vital to keep military-to-military relations close and vibrant between us and a rising superpower. Military-to-military exchanges with China, like the one planned at Naval Station Mayport, holds promise for broader understanding between our nations, said the Jacksonville Congressman and Defense Appropriator, Representative Andrew Crenshaw. In his statement, he also said, "On the long run, however, a display of goodwill must indicate transparency of mission around the globe and, in particular, a de-escalation of unwelcome movements in the South China Sea." Conservative Republicans aren't so sure. We're being a lot more open and welcoming with the Chinese, they say, than the Chinese are being with us, at a time when we should be pressing them on their bad behavior. The chairman of the House Seaport Committee, frequent Obama critic Randy Forbes, was much less restrained in his critique than Crenshaw. He said, "It puzzles me that the Chinese continue to ratchet up their aggressive behavior. The artificial structures that they are trying to put out in the South China Sea, the reckless intercept of some of our planes, and yet the way we tend to respond to that is by rolling out the red carpet to them and giving them the key to the city." Okay, so there you have it. So what exactly is going on here? What exactly are we doing? What are we doing? Is this desperation and weakness dealing with Beijing? Let me play this clip and see if we can kind of make sense out of this.
Well, it hasn't been approved yet. It's in preparation, and they're making a big press play about how they intend to do this. Ash Carter has said repeatedly, "We'll go anywhere we want, thank you." And it has to be seen as deadly serious. You're looking at a situation where the U.S. is beginning to deploy massive military forces into the Philippines. It has not, the decision between the U.S. and President Noynoy Aquino has not been approved yet by the Supreme Court, a decision which completely flies in the face of the Philippine Constitution, which says there shall be no foreign bases on Philippine soil. So they have played a trick where they're going to allow 8 different U.S. military bases to be set up within Philippine military bases and just simply say, well, they're not really U.S. bases, they're just friends, guests. 2 of these bases are in Palawan Island, which juts out into the South China Sea. The U.S. is massively militarizing the entire region. They're forming a ring around China and Russia's Far East with nuclear anti-ballistic missile systems, as they are in Europe around Russia's border. They're preparing for war, world war. Everyone in the world knows that, except some of the dumbed-down American population. But it is a extremely dangerous situation. And for them to then go ahead and say, well, we're going to fly with push our ships in within this 12-mile district for no reason, just to say, we'll do anything we damn please, thank you, has no purpose other than a provocation. I don't think the Chinese would respond with any kind of a military response. They would simply complain, but there's no purpose other than that military provocation to go along with what's going on in Asia otherwise. And, of course, far more importantly, that this is happening at the same time that Vladimir Putin has called Obama's bluff. And by moving into Syria to do what the West claimed it was doing, which was fighting the ISIS barbarians, which, of course, they were not. They were simply providing air cover to keep the Syrian government, Air Force and Army out of the districts. And Putin, having called the bluff, formed an alliance with the Assad government, the legitimate government, moving in militarily under international law, working hand-in-hand with Iran and Iraq, has called Obama's bluff. Obama has yet only responded by blaming Russia for doing something illegal, which, of course, is the exact opposite. So we're looking at Obama boxed in, where he may, in fact, respond by going to war, setting up a no-fly zone, for instance, in Syria, which would lead to a war with Russia, which would escalate globally, which would include China. So we're now sitting on the brink of war, but we're in a relatively good position where Obama has been exposed, where what Vladimir Putin has done is brilliant. It was done in collaboration with Xi Jinping, as evidenced by the tremendous celebration of the 70th anniversary of the defeat of fascism in Beijing. And therefore, these kinds of provocations are desperate signs of the weakness of this president, who is increasingly capable of being removed through impeachment or through the 25th Amendment. And were he to actually start a similar kind of provocation in the South China Sea, as they're indicating, or if it escalates beyond that especially, I think it would be proof positive that this president is stark raving mad and has to be removed under the 25th Amendment, which I think is increasingly possible and, in fact, necessary if we're going to stop the danger of war and the simultaneous danger of the total breakdown of the Western financial system.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so are we on the verge of going to war with China? Now, a few weeks ago, we actually was flying in the space where those man-made islands were, and there's dispute about that they can't recognize those as islands. And I totally understand that. But you can hear from the Chinese Navy basically telling them to leave the particular area. I mean, there's going to be a confrontation. So what do? A few weeks later, we have 3 Chinese ships here in Mayport, in Florida, Jacksonville, Florida, at Mayport Naval Station. Will somebody please tell me what's going on? What are we doing? What are we doing? This is absolutely unbelievable. 3 Chinese warships here, docked at Mayport Naval Station here in Jacksonville, Florida.
Foreign military aircraft. This is Chinese Navy. You are approaching our military alert zone. Leave immediately.
High above the South China Sea, the radio crackles with a stern warning.
Go, go!
The source of dispute appears on the horizon seemingly out of nowhere. Islands, man-made by China, hundreds of miles from its coastline.
So when's the last time you went up?
CNN got exclusive access to classified U.S. surveillance flights over the islands.
80 knots.
Check.
The first time journalists have been allowed on an operational mission by the state-of-the-art P-8A Poseidon, America's most advanced surveillance and sub-hunting aircraft.
So we've just arrived on station now above the 3 islands that are the targets of today's mission. It's these 3 islands that have been the focus of China's building in the South China Sea over recent years.
China's alarming creation of entirely new territory in the South China Sea is one part of a broader military push that some fear is to challenge U.S. dominance in the region, sailing its first aircraft carrier. equipping its nuclear missiles with multiple warheads, developing missiles to destroy U.S. aircraft carriers, and now building military bases far from its shores. For the U.S., the islands are a step too far, and this flight is part of a new and bold American military response that may soon include sailing U.S. warships close by as well. In just 2 years, China has expanded these islands by 2,000 acres, the equivalent of 1,500 football fields and counting, an engineering marvel in waters as deep as 300 feet.
You're a military man. You look at this, is there any doubt that that is a future military installation?
It appears to be build-up of military infrastructure, and not to mention we were just challenged probably 30 minutes ago, and the challenge came from Chinese Navy, and I'm highly confident it came from ashore on this facility here.
What used to be the Fiery Cross Reef now has early warning radar, an airport tower, and a runway long enough to handle every aircraft in the Chinese military. Some are calling it China's unsinkable aircraft carrier. These videos of the islands, taken from the P-8's advanced surveillance cameras, never before declassified. In a sign of just how valuable China views them, the new islands are already well protected.
There's obviously a lot of surface traffic down there, Chinese warships and Chinese Coast Guard ships.
We heard the proof. The Chinese Navy ordering the P-8 out of the airspace not once, not twice, but 8 times on this mission.
This is the Chinese Navy. This is the Chinese Navy. Please go away quickly.
And like the surveillance videos, the audio of these warnings never before shared with the public.
You heard over the intercom, Chinese Navy, this is the Chinese Navy. And what was interesting is that there were also civilian aircraft. There was a Delta flight on that same frequency that when it heard that challenge, it piped into the frequency to say, what's going on? The Chinese Navy then reassuring them, but as the flight crew tells me, that can be a very nerve-wracking experience for civilian aircraft in the area.
And the more China builds, we're told, the more frequently and aggressively it warns away U.S. aircraft.
This is a dredger actually pumping sand from under the water on top of an area they're trying to build up land. And we see this every day. So I think they work weekends when they're doing this because
24/7.
It happens. We see it all the time.
Are we on the brink of war with China, which of course would get Russia involved, with this situation that's happening in Syria? This is unbelievable. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Enceladus Radio, Off the Grid. Thank you for listening. We'll have more to come.
You're listening to Enceladus Radio.